Hey everyone, welcome to the ufohub live stream and open lines. Welcome. If you would like to share some of your stories, please join me on Telegram, and you can simply install the app on your phone or computer, find the UFO Hub group, and you should be able to join and basically chat with me, share your stories. But before I begin, and I figured I'll make this a habit each time we start. This is not an official interview. So if you're someone who came thinking that this is what's going on today, it is not. We're just simply chatting, people sharing their stories, and just hanging out online. And so if you expected something like an interview, I'm sorry, I apologize, but I'm sure you can find some other interviews. Like last Friday, did a great interview with Red Pill Junkie, and this coming Friday, I'm trying to work some things out to have Ray Hernandez on. We're trying to basically having some technical difficulties. I'll have him come in later on today, and we'll see how it works out with his connection and my system. But anyway, so I hope you can join us, have fun. If not, I'm sure you'll find another show that you might enjoy more. So anyone else watching and here for the reasons for open line, welcome. Thank you for being here. And so this week has been a bit slow for me when it comes to UFO Hub, but very busy outside. And I promised my kids for 5-6 years now a whole bunch of things that I was going to build in the yard, and always pushed it off, always having some kind of excuse. So we figured this year is finally kind of getting to the point to where they really want all the things that I told them about. And I might do a little video about it. I sometimes like to record things as I build them. So probably will upload them on another channel that I have, which is called Totally Rad Everything. And also I started a brand new channel on Rumble as well. So we'll see wherever it ends up being uploaded. But welcome for now. So I don't necessarily have anything planned for today. I have some people that are in the Telegram chat. We'll see who wants to start out to tell their story. If they're just here to listen, that's perfectly fine too. You can either watch this and interact online and chat, or just listen to it over Telegram. All right, let me see where we are here. Stream's looking good. For those that are on Telegram, simply raise your hand, which would tell me that what I mean by that, there should be a button that allows you to be unmuted, or you're asking to talk, and that tells me that you're interested to talk to me and share your story. So that way I know I can bring you in. Otherwise, I just know you're here to listen. All right. We got on the chat today, Foreign Invasion, welcome. Fabrice, one of these days I'm going to get the name right. Welcome. Bradley, welcome. So let me see here. Yeah, I don't necessarily, usually there's something that I'm going over first, covering, making sure to, if there's anything big in the UFO news, even though I'm not necessarily into it, maybe some of you might want to know about it or have not heard about it. It's just not something I generally follow. I'm sure there's so many people out there that could help you out and do videos on that specific thing. But it's just never been my thing. I've been more interested in trying to figure out what is the whole point of this UFO phenomena. Why is it happening? And so all my path, I guess, kind of took me going down that route to figure that out, instead of doing the nuts and bolts part. For those of you who are visiting his channel often, they know me mentioning that all the time. So if I don't have any particular news, you all know that, and we all know UFOs exist. Whether you want to call them UFOs, UAPs, where they came from, why they're here, I guess I'm just going to have to let the government kind of struggle with that one, because most of us did, 20, 30 years ago, and we found our answers. If and when they're ready to I guess, hear from the different experiences, I'm sure we're here. Otherwise, they're just going to start the whole path out on their own, trying to figure it out, what it is about, and I guess struggle and stumble as we all did, because I have a feeling in some way they want to have an upper hand um, over this phenomena, so that they can still come out as an authority to basically have something to tell us, to make us feel safe, and to just say, don't worry, we're in control of whatever this new thing is, don't be afraid, which in essence is kind of the job of the government. But as we all know, governments can sometimes overdo it and overstep so many boundaries, and just cross all kinds of lines. So anyway, all right, we don't have anyone else sharing anything or wanting to speak to me yet in um, in Telegram. So I'm just gonna go through and see what it is that all of you are chatting about. Okay, but you guys can hear me, right? My connection is coming through all right, because I'm seeing everything being streamed out and pushed out. Because I saw Fabrice said that there's no sound, but it looks like it was probably something on his end. Isa Peacekeeper, welcome as well. So until we have somebody who would like to maybe talk and share their story on Telegram, if there's any questions that you guys might have that maybe I could address, please let me know. All right. Let's see here. Yeah, because what I sometimes do, I log in and open the chat ahead of time just so that I can get it going, and I'll bring it into OBS and stream it out to you guys, the voice chat that is. So just earlier today, I got to chat with Bradley a bit, and so it's always nice. And if you would like to kind of get, I guess it's not necessarily a insider thing. You don't have to do anything for it. All you got to do is just log in a bit earlier. Because I usually try to log in about a half hour beforehand, and just get things going on my end. It's sometimes it's really um, kind of sucks having to cover whatever else is going on. By myself, because I have the connections. We got everything going on. So I'm like, all right, click here, click there, connect here, connect there. All right. Okay. And yeah, welcome to all of you in Telegram. If you would like to chat with me, you just raise your hand, let me know. Otherwise, hang tight and just listen to me rambling on and on. I'm hoping that I could have some of you log in, share some of your stories, because that's the whole point of having open lines. Otherwise, that is pretty much my whole sole purpose, because I always usually have somebody else that's someone who's written a book or had an experience, having always, being in this official interview. But, you know, a lot of times, like we've seen in previous open lines, there's so many people that have experiences on their own that are worth sharing. And I just wanted to kind of open that up and just create an online version of a UFO hub meeting, so that, and even though we may not live close by, even though we might have slightly different interests, at least this is one day a week where all of us could just come together, listen to others, and talk. Because I remember when I still lived in St. Louis, there were all these at least 3-4 different meetings throughout the month going on around town, and there'll be hundreds of people. So it was always fun meeting, and you chit chat, and you share stories, and some would have latest experiences, so they tell us about it. And so all of us being kind of isolated now, it kind of just helps to just make it public, make it go online, and give everyone a fly on a wall kind of a view of what is going on with all these crazies that are into UFOs. All right, we got Bren. Bren, you are muted, and unmute yourself, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Bren, and I've been a contactee for many years,
Hi, Bren. Welcome.
decades. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I wanted to thank you for, I've not spoken, so I'm not sure if my voice is coming across okay. I have a very quiet, low voice, but
No, you're great.
I'm just, okay, cool. I just wanted to thank you for the work that you do, and I know you guys are a small operation, and I really appreciate you so much. I noticed in your Ozark conference that you had Mary Rodwell there, and she had interviewed me over some of my contact experience at Gary Hesselin or Hesseltine, depending on how you pronounce it. EMAG. It's called Truth, UFO Truth magazine. At any rate, she did an article on me after a couple years of emailing me about my contact experience. And included in some of that stuff was, and you had started out talking about the government's obligation to bring forward the information, and that, it's going to, clearly everybody has had an opinion on that about how much it's actually going to reveal. I'm so sorry.
That's
I
all
need
right.
to take this. Hold on.
Go ahead. All right. I guess she had a phone call she needed to take, but that's all right. She'll probably be back. And yeah, it's all unscripted. There's I appreciate you spending your Wednesday with us. We don't have any, or I try not to have any specific guidance, because there's so many structured things, and I'm sure if you just want to watch a movie, you can switch off this and do that. But this is just basically kind of showing you what is happening as we're all just meeting online and chatting about our experiences. Bren, are you ready?
Yes, absolutely. And I do
Okay.
apologize for that.
No problem.
Yeah, it's getting back to the government's obligation. I had described in my contact experiences to Marion, to Richard Dolan, who I really didn't understand about the nuts and bolts thing, and me being an experiencer, it was kind of a weird thing. But even though many experiencers contact him, it's really not his approach to it. He likes to go for hardcore evidence. And while there's evidence there, and my entire family ended up being mill-labbed 4 times over the years, I had a lot of contact, and the government had evidence of it, obviously, or they wouldn't have come after me and my family. But my
Can you explain?
comment
I'm
about,
sorry. Come after you. How? Which way?
well, literally, what's termed as a mill lab.
I'm sorry. A what?
It's called a mill lab. Starts with an M as in Mary. A military abduction.
Oh, okay.
And they take you, and they'll drug you, question you. They
Right.
use
Okay.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do know. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah. It's all right. So, but some people pronounce it MILAB, but it's an acronym of military abduction. And I've always thought about that and went, well, it's military isn't pronounced military. So at any
right.
at any
Right.
rate, so my experience has been that they, and this is going back a number of years now, that they used impunity for many years against people that they knew that had that they had hardcore evidence of, pictures, some kind of evidence that the person had direct contact. And I have a lot of empathy for the experiencer and contact community, because they're considered some of the least reliable witnesses. That wouldn't be my case, or a number of people that clearly they had targeted, in terms of trying to silence, but for years they had. And I have this feeling, and I was thinking about it, I have this feeling that the government will not be completely forthcoming about how they've been used impunity, violated human rights treaties over the years with their handling of my labs or mill labs and others that they knew had contact, because their policy for so long has been, for 70 years, has been the utmost secrecy. So my take on that was just the fact that I don't see them coming forward and admitting the human rights violations in the process of getting the evidence and things that they wanted, which was mostly wanting technology. That first and foremost, it was wanting technology. But I was wondering how you felt about the June release that's coming up, and the government revealing those things, and how much you think they'll reveal.
Well, I mentioned that I think last time that somebody was putting up a little countdown, 180 days T minus so and so. And to be honest, I don't know where exactly, where it would land, other than there would be at the very beginning stages of where most of us were years ago, about, okay, fine, we're going to admit that there's lights in the sky. There's things that we don't know what they are, and it's going to be at the very beginning stages of, where all of us, we're past it. We're like, okay, let's get ready, get on the ships and travel to the next galaxy. They're still right back to where there's lights, and so if there is going to be some kind of disclosure, it's going to be that really slow, drawn out way, to where, I mean, they already admitted that UFOs exist, but yet everyone just kind of, okay, great, and then went about their lives. Pentagon didn't deny the footage that they released, that was released about those what is that night vision triangular craft, and even prior to that,
Phoenix Lights,
2000, yeah. Well, no, not Phoenix Lights. This was taken on board of the of this Navy
Oh, yeah,
footage
it
that
was
they
a
have.
pilot, like
Right,
a pilot screen. Yeah.
right. And so anyway, but then going back in, New York Times in 2017 with the TikTok and all the releases that came out there. I mean, I don't know what it would take for people to be more interested in it. It's still almost seems like a I don't know how to call it, but you know how when you have these tabloids and you're in a supermarket and you go, so and so famous broke up with so and so famous, and you're like, oh, okay, how bad? And they're like, oh, let me get a Snickers, and then you check out. It's kind of like that, which is fine. I mean, I've always said I don't need anyone to really believe what it is that I know about. It's just this is what I'm passionate about. I share it with other people, offer opportunities to just chat with, like we are now. But my life is not going to change that much more, other than maybe now, there will be more outlets to hopefully get to the bottom of it quicker, because most people always live in this, I don't mean this in a negative way, but in this herd mentality. It's like, okay, well, I need 1 billion people, right, to be believing in this, then I can, okay, get into this. If it's not 1 billion people, then all right, then I'll just going to work, take care of family, and just go, to a day-to-day business. So regarding that, I doubt it will be anything of significance. I'll be really surprised if it is, but it's still up to us to just continue, sharing our stories, talking any pictures that we have. Thanks to YouTube, we can upload, thanks to Rumble, thanks to, all these different outlets out there. And we don't necessarily need the mainstream news anymore or the governments to really put the information out there. We can just kind of circumvent it and say, hey, well, I have this. If you're interested, look at it. If not, okay. It's the part is when you must insist that somebody believes it, that that somehow you need someone else's validation. That's when you kind of get yourself in your little trouble, so to say, because then you make everything conditional.
Exactly. And I couldn't agree with you more on the release of that data, and that basically disclosure occurred a long time ago.
Right.
But then, you have outfits like NASA that are constantly on the hunt for intelligent life, and they might find some intelligent organism if you continue to fund them. And it's like the endless hunt for a heffalump. You know what I'm saying? It's some creature that is non-existent, and they're not going to find. And for us, it's not never going to change. Once your paradigm is changed as an experiencer, as a contactee, however your contact came, whether it was something visual, whether it was C4 on taken on ships or whatever it is, um, once your paradigm has been shifted like that, there's no unlooking it,
Right, right.
basically. And so we just moved from there. But I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely that this is something that's not new to us. That's not going to change our perspective as contactees or experiencers. It's nice that they validate those things, but we don't need validation because we've already had plenty of it. That's for sure.
Right. Well, Bren, I don't mean to change the subject, but you kind of dropped a huge bombshell there about my lab or military lab, and then we went off on a different tangent. Would you like to talk
Not
about
at all.
that?
Well, okay. I had enough contact over the years that they had evidence through photos, and I knew through the actual contact experience that they had photos. In one case, it was Navy divers as the craft itself was underwater. And in another case, they allowed a live feed through so that they could see. And when they did, could see me inside the ship. And they weren't really expecting it. And I think because of my youth and the fact that I didn't look like I was attached to or might not have been a part of the craft, meaning coming from the ET perspective, even though they would take me and do things, even going to contacting other people here and asking them if they would be willing to take information back to Earth and that kind of thing. So it was a lot of contact experience over the years. They
Bren,
have
I'm
pictures of
sorry.
it.
I hate to interrupt, and usually I don't. If you know how I do,
It's okay.
how I talk with you. But can you go back? I'm just a little bit confused how you started out your story. Just give me a little bit more context. Who exactly are you
Uh,
referring to? I'm sorry.
okay. Excuse me. Since I was a child, I had contact that would have been, I forgot what Hynek method would have classified it as, but it was taken on craft. A big part of my contact was almost, it seemed like almost overnight, them being able to communicate telepathically, and their contact with me has really expanded my own gifts at things like remote viewing, telepathy, these kind of things. It was like activating something in my DNA by having that close contact. But they would take me, and their central focus was the nuclear problem. And they had said to me as a young child, they didn't want, they asked for my help, and I said to them, well, what do you want my help for? I'm just a little girl. And they said, because we don't want them to annihilate each other. And while I had a very wide vocabulary for a young girl, I said, what do you mean by annihilate? And they said, we don't want them to destroy each other. And then I said, what do you mean destroy each other? And then instead of speaking in words, they spoke in visual pictures, very alive, as if you're standing on those grounds, wherever it was, in different parts of the world where they had launches of these at these missile sites, but they'd go up and they wouldn't have enough lift, come down, crash, blow up the pad. Another one would go up, come down nose front first, blow up the launch pad. Others would, get so far up into the air and everyone's clapping, and then suddenly the thing blows up. And then it finishes it off with a big orange mushroom cloud and said, uh, nothing. And at that point, I was so shocked by the imagery and what they were saying, which I took very seriously, as I didn't question it. I knew that in all sincerity that they were being honest, compassionate, and care about people here on Earth. And then ended up on about a 22 to 25 year odyssey of being taken with them during the buzzing of different missile facilities around the world, along with contact experience in which they were showing me things in which I was connected to them. And they had told me from the very beginning that I was like one of them and that they were here to protect me. Well, I really couldn't digest that for a long time because I'm a pretty sensible person. I didn't really understand that until many years later, when the subject of starseed and that kind of thing, and the experiencer, and how some experiencers can be with the same beings lifetime after lifetime, and that's been my experience with them. So that's the reference point.
Okay.
And so in their quest to send a strong message to the military, there were times when we were just, I would call it a joyride after, so many years of being taken like that and treated like family, protected, and given the most profound experiences. And then sometimes it was just, like I said, a joyride, but they had pictures of it. And within 20 minutes, in the first incident in which they ended up mylabbing my family, within 20 minutes of being floated back through the wall in San Jose, California, in 1967, my dad, who was a naval intelligence officer, had received a phone call about 20 minutes later from his commanding officer saying there'd been an incident, and then he started asking questions. And he said things like, and my dad was only home on leave for about 3 days from Vietnam. And he said, whoever was on the phone with him said, it must have said, is she there? Because my dad winks at me, in my jammies. My mom's in the kitchen making coffee, and there's only 2 women in the house, and I'm in the living room, and the other female is in the kitchen. And he says, well, I beg your pardon, sir. I have 2 females here, meaning, is she there? And then they must have specified, because my dad shot me this kind of look like he was the good cop and my mom was the bad cop. And he shot me a look like, what have you gotten into now? And it was a very public story that many people are really very well aware of, very well documented. But what wasn't documented by the government or published by the government, even though they acknowledged that it was a UFO incident to the public, was the fact that they had pictures of 2 occupants. But during the line of questioning, the subsequent mill lab, there's a lot of details here. I wrote about it at a blog. I would rather keep kind of private. I have nominal traffic there. But I had to finally write about it because there was a lot of details to it. The way that these men in gray because the incident happened in Canada, so these men in gray seemed to appear out of thin air. And when after they talked my mother into bringing me up there, or with airfare and accommodations provided by them, and then paying her, they just wanted to ask questions. They just wanted to ask a couple questions. But it ended up to be a 7-day nightmarish, surreptitiously drugging our food, stay at this place up on a small mountain or a small hill. It was maybe 800 to 1,000 feet high over a valley. At any rate, their line of questioning, I believe, was based on the fact that they thought that I was one of them, because they were asking things like, who are you, what are you, and where are you from? But the military would never acknowledge, they acknowledged the UFO incident, which I won't name here. It's very well known. Mm-hmm. They acknowledged the incident, and it's even on the paperwork itself that, UFO, that they identified this, but they never published the pictures. They never published what the yellow foam was, which I could describe to a T, and why it was floating on the surface, and how the accident occurred, and all the rest of it, which I had written and shared with Mary Rodwell as well. And I had even contacted Paul Hellyer over that particular case a handful of years ago, asking if I could, talk with him about that. since it was such a big issue and since he was on deck at the time that it went down. And so there was my dad getting this call from his commanding officer saying there'd been an incident. And so they debriefed him for 2 days. And then when he came home, he basically told the family that we weren't allowed to whisper about it even in the confines of our home. The men in gray had literally about 3 days after Dad took leave back to Vietnam, appeared out of nowhere as Mom and I, and out of thin air, because there was no cars. There was no movement, no sound. They just started walking up towards us. And at first I thought, where'd they come from? But it didn't really become clear to my mother and I until after they took their leave. And we were unloading groceries, all these paper bags out of the back end of the car. And they came up and they made the proposal to be able to talk with me and ask me a few questions. And so then while my mother agreed, she was reluctant. But before the 7 days were up, she was like, I can't wait to get out of this place. And it was nightmarish. But when they went to take their leave was the oddest thing. And I've heard other people refer to this, where these men in black, men in gray will appear, what it seems to be, out of nowhere, out of thin air, and then they disappear again. And this is what I truly believe, is that they are a non-terrestrial element that has pretty much secured very powerful agencies of this world. And that's my take on it. And while they may look very human, I do not believe that they are. And this is because the way that they disappeared, as I started to look right at them, they were supposed to be turning around to walk away. I caught part of them just disappearing into thin air. And what, not sure of it, as a young girl of 9, I said, because this is about a handful of decades ago, in 1967, as I'd stated. And I looked at my mom and I said, where did they go? And she's like almost looking right at them too, but just kind of scans around. And this is a street that's tree lined, that almost the trees almost grow right over the top of the street. But it goes on for, it's more than just a regular city block. It's more like 3 blocks long without broken up, and it's all homes and condominiums now. And so you can look both directions on that street. And for as far as you can see on the horizon, each direction, you can see activity, people walking on the street, cars moving, etc. And they never got in a car. They just seemed to disappear into thin air just as they were turning around to walk away. And I just happened to look up and catch part of it. And, was like, Mom, where'd they go? And then she said, I don't know. They didn't even get into a car. And she's like, we're just stood there baffled. But that was the first one. And then there was a second one a couple of months later. And in all
I just want to
frankness,
have a quick follow-up question real quick. So
okay.
were you the main focus during this? You said your family as well was drugged, you said?
Yes, well, my mother and I were drugged. I'm not sure about my dad's debriefing with the Navy. The Navy wasn't happy. I don't have a non-disclosure agreement, so
So
I've
did they
never
go
been.
home after a while and then you were held there the whole 7 days, or?
No, my mother was asked to fly with me back to Nova Scotia, where the event took place.
Okay.
And the place that they took us to was about 45 minutes outside of Halifax Airport.
Okay, all right, thanks for clarifying that.
And it was a military installation and has been turned into a provincial park in the subsequent years.
Okay, and then what was you were saying something about second experience and I cut you off, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So pertaining to that event was a second mill lab, but they turned it, it was so strange because they had approached my mom, knowing her name. She said it was a very handsome man, but she didn't know him. She said that they approached her knowing her name, knowing my name, knowing family and friends, and said they were a friend of our family, or a friend of the family kind of thing. And that there was this kids party in April even though it was a little bit early for San Jose, it's kind of cool in Central California. Beginning of April, first couple of weeks, they had a pool party for kids and invited me and if Brenda would like to go. And well, she's like, I don't know them, but they knew everybody in our family, so I'll check it out, and if I feel it's safe, then I'll let you go to this little kids pool party. And it was a big house, and it had lots of food everywhere, and lots of kids, and everyone's enjoying the jumping in and out of the pool and having a good time. But at some point, I went in to get get some punch. It was like, and you want red punch or orange punch, and here, I'll get it for you. Well, as they went to get it for me, as looking like clean cut middle class hosts with Bermuda shorts and collared t-shirts on, they surreptitiously drugged the punch and then guided me into a hallway to a side bedroom, and then wanted to ask or started asking questions, but the ones asking questions were in the bedroom and never seen at all during the party, and they were wearing suits. And the two in the suits then said, they laid me down on the small bed and started asking me questions. And I was scared because while I was a little woozy from whatever they put in there, they didn't put too much in there, and I was on like, whoa. And it was scary because, am I going to go through the same thing? Are they going to hurt me? What's going to happen? What are their intentions? And ironically, they asked the same line of questioning that they did up in Nova Scotia. Who are you? What are you? And where are you from? To put it into context, because they had photos, at one point, the very human-looking being had in the ship was trying to get it to shut it down properly. So he's doing all of these things manually. And I walked towards the front to ask him what he was doing. And he tells me this. He says, but don't look out the window because they're looking. And I said, who's looking? And as I said that, because it's kind of a wraparound window, and I'm standing next to him, like in the front by a control panel, I just turned to my right and looked through the window, with maybe a slight scowl on my face, like, who's looking, kind of thing. And right then, there was flashes of light in the water, 2 big divers and 1 smaller one trying to take pictures over their shoulders. And so we could see that they were taking pictures. And this is at night during that event, and by 8:20 that morning, the Navy was calling my dad saying there's been an incident and there's going to be a debriefing.
And those in the water, those were the humans, right?
In the water,
Or
taking
the
pictures of
military, I
us
should
were,
say.
yeah, they were Navy divers. Of which Navy I couldn't identify by their scuba suits, but it was either the RNC, is that what they call it up in Canada, or the U.S. Navy. But somehow the U.S. knew about it too, because then they questioned me with the same line of questioning, back in my home city.
Right. Well, that's so. I mean, your parents, were they aware of what was discussed, or were they not allowed to ask you any questions?
Adnan, that was the most uncomfortable breakfast of my entire life, because now my parents have both talked about it quietly in the kitchen. And I know that the what's just hit the fan. And I was hoping that I could play off that. It was really strange, because I was hoping that I could play off that I was just sleeping under my covers still, and that Mom didn't pull the covers back to look at me, because you could see it from the ship. So the ship that was a rescue ship, it wasn't exactly like we could turn around and say, oh, hey, could you step on it? We don't want our mother to find out. And he kept saying inside the ship, the rescued pilot with me, I don't want her to find out. I don't want her to find out. I didn't really know at first what he was talking about, but then suddenly from the ship, I can see through this remote view, my parents looking for me, my mom all over the house, and my dad around the perimeter, around a couple of houses, and asking neighbors and everything. And then him coming back and saying she's nowhere, and said, should we call the police? Let's give it a few more minutes. And we were going at what I felt, even though there was no windows open, I felt like we were going at a very modest to extremely cautious pace. But at the same time, it's not like you could turn around and tell your rescuers, hey, could you step on it? We don't want her mother to find out that she's missing. So while I'd been having ongoing contact, I was trying to keep, the contact experience in the back and the business in the front, and trying to keep the two separate. And it was one of the first times that they technically were advised by an agency, in this case the Navy, that I was having contact. But as a young child, when they had, as I had started to describe, they had come to me about the nuclear issue, and said they didn't want them to annihilate each other. I was missing, shortly thereafter, I was missing for 2 straight days, and was living in Montana at the time, and they searched everywhere for me and couldn't find me for 2 days. But when I was returned to exactly the spot they had taken me from. And initially didn't have any memory of it and couldn't understand why everybody was so angry at me for just showing up. And they were certain that somebody in my locality had taken me and made me promise to stay quiet, about them taking me. But I said, no, it wasn't like that. And when I tried to confide in someone to say, do you believe in flying saucers, who was a dear friend of mine at the time, but a few years older than me, because he kind of said it in a mocking way, oh, you mean like little green men from Mars, and was smiling at me like in a loving way, but patronizing. And I looked at him and put my hand up and said, forget it, and walked away. And he's going, no, tell me. No, forget it. And I even knew at a young age that discussing it at all meant putting up with everybody else's debunking, taunting guffaws, and all the rest of it. And I just wasn't going to have it. So back to that first experience where, while I had many experiences in between, the parents and authorities didn't find out about them each time. But while they knew that I was missing the first time they did, in the earlier days, they did not get confirmation, whereas, a handful of years later, they had utter confirmation of it. So there we are, sitting there having breakfast, the most uncomfortable breakfast of my entire life. My parents are at one end of the table. I'm at the other end of this like long rectangle table, not too long. And everybody's really quiet, and my mom's kind of whispering to my dad, and I can tell that she wants to say something, and he's telling her, now take it easy. She's been through a lot, and don't so again, Dad's playing the good cop, and he's trying, and then my mom kept going, I have to ask. And finally she burst out and says, why would you even go with beings like that? And I looked at her and I said, I just looked at her with a butthurt face and said, those are my friends. And if you can imagine, they're like, you're a parent, you're concerned, you're scared, and when you get so mad, you're almost shaking, and they're like, she's shaking and going, they're not your friends. And my poor mom, I got up from the table and I wasn't going to have any of it, and I left the breakfast. But it was the most uncomfortable breakfast of my life, because my parents were quite aware of what was going on. They'd just been told Dad's in trouble with work because, well, the Navy wasn't happy about his daughter having contact. I mean, it was just like, because nothing had happened during that whole event that would have warranted it being an issue of national security, or it being a breach of a secret facility, or a protected facility, or anything like that, of some of the other stuff that they did. It was simply to show me how they fly in the air, and then they morph their shape to more like a tic tac, and then go underwater.
But
And
was there
that's
no
all he was doing.
concern? Yeah, was there no concern on their end? Just, never mind, official, and what do we call them? Basically, like, which parent would not be concerned about, are you okay? What happened to you? It's a kind of like having sleepless nights, instead of just kind of letting the government say, okay, don't talk to her about this, and kind of letting them control the family dynamics.
Well, my dad was a lifer in the Navy. My mom and dad have divorced since then. I had more a contact experience that they had evidence of, and I won't be describing it, but there was a second mill lab, or 2 more mill labs, over a second incident about 2 years later. and it was, I feel lucky to have survived it. And they had attacked my mom in front of me using impunitive techniques that were right out of the Winsec manual on torture, you know, hurting a child in front of a parent, hurting a parent in front of a child kind of stuff.
Right.
So for them to do that, they had to have hardcore evidence. They did. And, but my parents were too intimidated. My dad was, and mom were just too intimidated. And I have no idea really, because my dad didn't discuss it with me and want to scare me more than I already was going through. And may have discussed it with my mom, who might have kept it to herself, but I have no idea what the Navy threatened. I just know that they threatened us to silence for many, many years.
Did you, by any chance, discuss any of it later with them once you got a bit older, or did that ever happen?
Well, it was discussed later because at one point, well, it was discussed a couple of years later with my mom, not at great length, but it was more like she wasn't mad or upset about me having contact as much as she was more upset at their reaction to it.
I'm sorry, one more time. She wasn't upset about.
Yeah, it wasn't so much that she wasn't upset about it, because initially they were just in shock and scared for me. But a couple years later, what was, instead of it being that being the focus of, you know, my God, you're having contact and this is scary or whatever, and trying to address it, she didn't know, they just didn't know how to deal with it. And when their reaction during a second, or actually a third and fourth, which is a separate contact experience that they had evidence of me being inside a ship, because at both of them they had pictures of me inside the ship. And
you mean your parents did?
No,
Oh,
the
you mean
military.
the military? Okay.
Yeah, the military had pictures. My parents didn't know anything. They're just being told by the military.
Did you ever
And
find
in
out
this
how
case,
they got those pictures?
okay, the pictures in the first case were taken by some kind of Navy divers, either the RNC.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
Okay, and
Right.
then the picture was a still from a live feed that had to do with it. I can't go into it right now because I haven't really come forward with that story yet.
Sure.
But it involved the military, a branch of the military, the Army, which conducts my labs or mill labs, and NASA. And the picture that they had was a still of a live feed. And they knew that I was in that ship, and they found me within a couple of short days. They came to my school in a uniform, in brown uniforms, 3 men asking for me by name. And we had just moved from San Jose to the Lancaster Palmdale area. And mom had taken a job temporarily and then was going to be moving closer into the Los Angeles basin to be closer to her brother and my aunt and uncle and everybody, and cousins. And at any rate, we were only going to be living there a short while. And at the time, I had no idea, Adnan, that Palmdale was a snake pit of black ops for the space programs or even secret space program.
Mm-hmm.
No idea. And so they came to the door asking for me. They wouldn't give any other information. The teacher was reluctant to let me go. She goes, you know, she shut the door in their face and says, "Do you know why men in uniform are coming to ask for you?" I said, "Well, my dad's away in Vietnam right now." But as a child, I wasn't thinking that it wouldn't be Army branch that would come to me to give me the bad news, and they wouldn't go to the child, they would go to the next living adult. But I wasn't thinking at the time.
Bren, can I ask you real quick? So
Yeah.
why is it that they didn't feel like they could just ask you to have him tell what you know, instead for them having to go to that extent to traumatize you and traumatize your family to that level? You know, why? Yeah.
I'm sorry, that gets back to what I had said before, which is there were great, I cannot be the only contactee that was dragged in by the government. and I cannot be the only contactee that they showed impunity to. So you know that over the years, and it being decades, almost 7 decades of airtight secrecy, that others had to have experienced something similar or worse. That's all I know.
Right, but what I'm saying is, why did they feel like, or do you have any answers regarding that? Why drag you? Why not just say what happened? Or
I
instead of having to, go through these
instead of
extremes.
doing all the horrible things that
Yeah.
they did, and they did. They went to great. Even that first one, um, they had at one point surreptitiously drugged our meal, not gone through the daily routine of asking the same questions again, the questioning. They took and moved my mother from the area we were sleeping in at this lodge and put her wherever, I don't know where. And then when I came to, after falling asleep right after eating something for dinner, I realized my mom wasn't there, so I started calling out to her, no response. I went to turn the light on because it felt scary in the dark, and because I'm a kid, I'm a 9-year-old kid.
Hmm.
I was 8 at the actually I was 8, and I went to flip the light switches on, and there was 3 men there that wore suits that claimed that they were from the government, but they never showed ID the whole time. Okay, the same ones that disappeared appeared out of thin air and disappeared into thin air by asking us to go there. Then they uh, had met us at the airport. They were there. They were doing the questioning. So suddenly I can't find them, but there were these lumbering big men that were wearing clown masks jumping out of shadows when the light switch wouldn't go on. So they flipped off the breaker. They're hiding her somewhere, and then they're using this some kind of shock method on me to scare the wits out of me. And I think a big part of that has to do with the type of beings that are controlling the controlling and or replaced what we think are humans, occupying places like the men in black, the men in gray. This gets down to the shadow people, but I believe that they're all archonic because they do move interdimensionally. And I was having a conversation about this the other day about how shadow people are not a separate entity. It is just the soul or the being of the archonic body, or it would be like our soul or spirit, our light body. But theirs is black, it doesn't hold any light and looks like a shadow. And they move interdimensionally all the time while they tell you to hold on to your skin and be grateful for the one life that you do have.
Hmm.
So at any rate, I truly believe that has everything to do with the impunity and the secrecy, because that particular race of the few races that are known to be here is one that really wants to hide its true nature and its true agenda here on Earth. And they are extremely malevolent, and they feed off of the like Draco types, is what they are.
Mm.
The Archonic Dracos is what I call them, because the Archons are not separate. The men in black or the shadow people are not separate. That is just them moving about in a different way. Same ones. And they are very malevolent, but they feed off of the energy field of humans in fear. So they create a lot of fear. And this really matches their the way that they're hardwired as beings, as a species. And so there's where your impunity comes from.
So are you basically saying throughout your life, so you go off, you have an experience with these extraterrestrials, then the military interrogates you, then you go back having another experience again, then they interrogate you after that, trying to find out what you're, so it just kind of goes back and forth for you. Is that, I mean, I hate to kind of
Yeah,
simplify, but would you
yeah,
say that would be it in a nutshell?
that's pretty much in a nutshell. There was 2 my labs, for the first event that they actually had a picture of me in a ship, and with the second event that they had a picture of me inside of a ship. They used fake spacemen because they wanted to try and get. They wanted to try to start off by getting technological information about his ship, which they could have given me had he not had to use the baton that one time in all those decades
Hmm.
with the little lights on top of it. because before he brought me back the night of the in question, where they had an open line of visual, and if you had the whole story, then you'd understand the context of it. And I don't think we have enough time for that tonight. But
Well, I
the
mean, no one else has raised their hand to want to talk, so feel free and welcome to share whatever
right,
you like.
but part of that is a little bit reluctant to come forward on that particular story
Okay.
yet. But like naming it, but let's put it this way, both of them were extremely high profile in that they hit the news, they were investigated, they were known to be UFOs involved, and one of them happened to be something involving NASA. The first one involved Canada, but the United States acted like that was their jurisdiction. And the second one involved an Army branch that carried out the MILAB, and and got ET assistance. So at between two different let me get the count straight. There's two MILABs associated to the first event that they had evidence of, because I've had a lot of contact in between and before and after, decades of it. And but they only came after me during the times that they had hard evidence of me having that contact. In the first one, they thought that I was one of them. In the second one, they wanted to know first about his ship. The fake spacemen pretended that they knew him from a planet far, far away. Yes, they actually said that, from a planet far, far away. And I thought that it was so odd that they were wearing gloves and darkened visors as they asked these things, and they were trying to pretend, like, my name is Garfon and I'm from a planet far, far away, and we think we know the person, whose ship you were on, and we were wondering if you could tell us a little bit about his ship. And but this is where they had taken me from my school. They manhandled me when they took me out the door. They grabbed me by the arms and they manhandled me. And I had already told my teacher's like, well, if it is your dad, would you please report back? And I had said, I don't know, my dad's in Vietnam. Well, my dad was okay, but I, of course, at that time didn't understand. And here I've got Army people. I'm thinking it's related to my dad. Is this about my dad? Is this my dad? What is this about? And as they're manhandling me and squeezing my arms with a vice grip, two big guys, a shorter one came around the front of me as soon as my classroom door clicked shut, and she stopped looking through the crack of it. She's watching the manhandling me, and I'm shaking my head like, oh, help me kind of thing, but I'm not trying not to vocalize it so that I don't draw their attention or their ear. And then the third guy came around to the front of me and walks backwards and sprays me with this little tiny canister in his hand. It smelled like WD-40, and everything went black. So when I did finally return to school about a week later, everybody had asked me, are you in trouble with the military? Why did the military drag you out to a car? And this kind of thing. There were a lot of witnesses, and it could have been very bad, and they were actually contemplating much worse. And I may not, if things had not gone better or gone as well as they did, I should say, even if as horrific as it was with those two MILABs to me and to my mom, I wouldn't be here to be able to talk about it.
Right. And so, I mean, I guess there's no end in sight for this. There's just, as long as you keep having contact, they'll just keep going as long as they feel like they can get something from you information wise, right?
If they have hard enough evidence, they'll drag anybody in. That's what I have witnessed. I can't believe that I'm the exception to the rule with millions of contactees.
Right. And so, what do you think this is ultimately going with you personally?
Well, really, it was very. See, I just kept those two lives separate. I kept my contact life and my mundane, everyday Earth life kind of just separate, even though they meshed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Even just my mother not able to find me for hours, and I would be somewhere else altogether. And I wouldn't tell her. I would never tell her. I would just, I'm sorry, I was out playing. I didn't hear you, that kind of thing. I didn't want them shocked and upset, because it was obvious from the first time that they did know that it was very upsetting to them. But my experience was with very peaceful beings, and very enlightening. And there were things that they showed me over time too, about some aspects of the military, and different things about other races here that are not so nice. They're malevolent. And it told me that they care a lot, not only about me personally, but about humanity in general, with their focus on nuclear weapons, and their pointing out of things that we really don't have access to. Popping in, like taking and saying, he would say to me, this same contact, he would say to me, you need to see this. And then he would remain reserved, not try to impress me, or not try to influence me. So he wouldn't say anything, even when I would turn around and go, what was that? Like, that was scary. What was that? And he would just show me, because he wanted me to walk away with what I saw and how I was digesting it, not adding anything to it.
Right.
And so there was a lot of additional experiences in there, in which they were trying to expose some of the things that these more malevolent ones are doing or involved with. And there is a much wider relationship with non-terrestrials, at least 4 of 5 known malevolent races. These are just the malevolent ones. They try to say that there's 3 races, 3 different competing races here, but there's a lot more. And they're not really competing. It's more of a case of the peaceful ones want to maintain diplomacy and not use action. But there's these other malevolent ones that have been present on Earth for thousands of years, that have their agenda, and the peaceful ones try to intervene when they can. But it's a quagmire. And I honestly, and this is what I honestly believe, Adnan, I truly believe that the United States, as much as it brags of being the strongest military in the world, is unwilling to admit that they have gotten, that these malevolent ones, that they made deals with the wrong ones back in the late 30s, early 40s, and that these malevolent ones have gotten their foot in the door, and they can't extricate themselves therein from the situation, and that they don't have any control over it, and that these malevolent ones really run a lot. It's not just the United States, though, it is other countries, but not all countries, as they've shown me, have malevolent races there. Some have peaceful ones.
Right. Bren, just please hold on one quick second. I just want to address the audience real quick. So
Okay.
everyone watching, Bren has been sharing their, experiences that are just very riveting. And, I hope you get something from it, and different contexts, different things that are happening, they happen differently to different people. Sometimes I guess if you can consider yourself lucky, we have these great experiences and contexts where just these loving, caring beings share this information that's very beneficial to us. And then we have an experience like Bren did, and I'm very happy and glad that she finally, I'm sure she mentioned she shared it with Mary Rodwell, and has been talking about her experiences. But throughout research, throughout my research, and I'm sure everyone else has been into this, there is a sliver of that military involvement that's always kind of in the background, and then it's not often talked about. So I'm glad she was able to call in and talk about that. But you can also join us on Telegram. You can download the app on the phone or on the computer, and simply find the UFO Hub group, and you'll see the voice chat going on right now. Join it, and tap the button, which basically tells me that you would like to speak to me, and then we'll, after Bren is done, we'll get to you as well. It's simply open lines. Call in, share your stories. If not, then at least log into Telegram or watching this video, and just and enjoy. And if you like these kind of things, please make sure to subscribe, hit your like button, and I would like to get back to talk to Bren some more. So Bren, I wanted to just real quick Sorry, I wanted to make that announcement because I've been seeing people coming in and out. So I don't know who else is new watching or who's been here this whole time. But during the conference, the very first speaker was Princess Janae, and she's from the Farsight Institute that was started by Courtney Brown. And it was interesting. She talked, there was they have a whole segment that they covered about the remote viewed and this person remote viewing. It was very interesting the way he was describing it. He says these people here kind of have this, I guess, this alternative motive, and the other people that were more human looking, which then he felt like they were more government types, they felt like they were getting something out of it, while in reality they were, pardon my French, getting screwed, you know. And so it's interesting you said that, because when I was watching what she was presenting and talking about, you know, it kind of correlates with what you were saying.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Farsight Institute, and that gal's very talented. And Courtney's a great guy. He's a really good person. I think he's doing a good thing there, trying to get other people trained to do that kind of stuff. Really miss Ingo too. It's really sad. But yeah, you know, as far as the experience goes, my only real negative experience was not with my contact experience over decades. It was with the military and or government's reaction to my contact. Yeah. Other than that, it was the most wonderful experience, and I wouldn't have changed or regret. I have never regretted any of my contact experience, but I wouldn't have changed it for anything. You know, it is what it is. But once you cross that threshold, and it's you know, you see the technology in work, you experience it. The telepathy, the expansion of the consciousness, the even bouncing through time, like, you know, going ahead a few years and coming back again, it is all part and parcel of an awakening experience. And I'd say 50% of contact experience isn't about technology and nuts and bolts evidence. It is about consciousness and the expansion of consciousness. And I feel absolutely almost more than fortunate, almost like gifted, that I had the positive experience that I did, that they opened my eyes to so many things around us. And, you know, putting it all to print, I'm thinking I really need to write all of it. And a lot of people, it's very easy for them to publish. For me, it's hard putting those things out there. But I come from, you know, I'm a child of the 60s. I'll be 62 at the end of the month. And I'm a child of the 60s. And back then, you know, 60s and 70s, it was not widely discussed. There was so much, and even before that in the 50s, so much stigma surrounding being a contactee, almost as if, you know, as if you're some kind of loose cannon or something, like there's something wrong with you. But that's all part and parcel of the propaganda. We all know that. I know that I'm preaching to the choir too about that. But there was a lot of impunity attached to that, and that wasn't really so much the focus of what I wanted to say. I just wanted to say that there was such a contrast between the two, between the you know, my contact experience was absolutely uber, and the reaction of the government was absolutely horrific. You know? And,
well, you know,
and
go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just going to say, and so here they want to release all of this information, but I can guarantee you, we will not get the full story. They're
Well,
not going to give all of it.
it's very interesting. You know, we all really start out, you know, with this scientific approach, right? Because everything's about what you see, you know, what can you prove, what do you hear, you know, all these things that you can have maybe a recording of, whether visual or
More tangible and more
right,
nuts and bolts. That's what
right.
nuts and bolts is all about. Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, it's not that most of us immediately wanted to kind of get out of that. It's where it eventually led that showed that that's not what's happening in the general picture. I mean, it's one thing to to say, oh, it's all about love and light, and it truly is, but it's one of these things when somebody has been through some very, horrific and horrible things, it's so difficult to just kind of have them even to get to start this healing process to where try to look past it, try to see, what was the whole point of that, and then there's of course these different understandings. Like, I don't know if you agree, but I was always during my experiences, there was a time when I was kind of, having these experiences where I have a thought and I would get an answer, so I would play around with that. And so I had this thought about, well, what is about this government, right? Why is the government so behind? And so I saw it as the government is there, as I've said before, it's like there for the, I guess, for the smallest group of people that are still in this extreme fear that need that kind of level of protection, to where somebody would kick in for them to protect them from these things when they're not willing to look at them themselves, which is the people that we know as that just absolutely don't want to have anything to do with UFOs. They don't care to know. And if you try to talk to them about it, they just roll their eyes and go about their way, And so, because I was trying to understand, okay, fine, there's all these spiritual teachings to everything that I've experienced. So what's up with government? What's so spiritual about government? And it just basically is this created collective that we call government, that's just there to cater to the strongest fear, to the biggest unknown, to say, don't worry, you don't have to do anything about this, I will protect you. I will be strong for you because you cannot be strong for yourself. And naturally, with that understanding, then it attracts all kinds of people, as you've mentioned, to where
Yeah.
they, it translates in this weird way. It starts out with this beautiful spiritual concept, but then it attracts these very morally bankrupt people, to where they don't see the bigger picture. They just know that for the greater good, we must do this one horrible thing, for this, go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I tell you, there the consciousness part of it, and I'll describe part of the second set of mill labs that where they were warning me, first of all, that they were trying to tell me telepathically as I'm freaking out, so drugged up. They're taking me to this building, and there's all these people with uniforms and stuff, and all these men, and I'm scared, and I keep pinching myself because I think I'm dreaming, and they start to say to me, "Don't believe them. They lie to people. They hurt people." So they're trying not to be alarmist, but they're trying to tell me, like in so many words, "You're not dreaming. This is happening. This is what they're like. Try and understand it." And so they kept repeating that, and it was actually helping to almost counteract the effects of the drug, and giving me like a little bit more of an adrenaline surge.
Mm.
At another time, they told me that my life was in mortal danger. So at some point, they're contemplating that the desert's a big place and nobody's going to find me, kind of thing. And they showed me exactly what they were contemplating as I sat in the chair looking at this lower ranking. He had a couple of bars, but he was a lower ranking commander to the blue uniforms that had all kinds of stars and bars on them, that was listening to try and see if they could get some technology earlier. And so many levels of power. It's not just some person in or some low ranking military person. The high ranking officials were there. This lower ranking person was contemplating my fate. They told me telepathically from above that my life was in mortal danger and I needed to find a way out of there. And I actually thought, I hadn't seen anybody in all these hours with any guns. There's two doors between me and the dirt parking lot. I bet I could run up to the highway fast enough and flag somebody down before they could grab me. I honestly thought that I could do it. And then suddenly I got this wave coming over me because they've stuck needles in me. They at one point had to give me a shot to counteract that it was slowing my heart to a stop and I couldn't use my limbs.
Mm.
That's how much they had. Yeah, and I don't think that they realized, because they're trying to continue to ask me questions under a certain state of, intoxicated inebriation there. And I'm just a young child, and my body's small, and I'm not a frail looking child. I'm pretty, healthy, but I wasn't handling it. And then they called a medic and they gave me a shot. And so I'm already so doped up that I get this wave coming over me. And I'm sitting in a chair in a small office in front of this other lower ranking commander, and he's looking at the file. And I can tell that the file has everything that they possibly know about me and my family, including any prior experiences that they had evidence of. And when they told me that my life was in mortal danger, they showed me, and even though I could feel the arms of the chair and knew that I was still sitting in the chair, it was as if I was transported outside into a fetal position with my cheek pressing against the dirt or the hard rock, the caliche, with the little pieces of rock stuck in the bedrock. And with my cheek on the ground, looking off to one side, all I could see was desert and sky, but I could feel cold steel a bit behind my neck. At this point, I started looking at this man because they're trying to tell me through imagery, and they speak that way many times. They don't just use words, they'll speak through imagery. And they're trying to tell me through imagery that my life's in mortal danger. So I start saying to this guy, are you going to hurt me? What are you going to do to me? Please don't hurt me. I'm begging you, but I'm begging for my life. And he looks up from the paperwork or from the files and looks at me almost like, how did you know what I was thinking? And then he kind of shakes it away and looks back at the material again. At that point, the one who had actually been the pilot that was there at the time that I was in the craft, the intervening pilot, we'll just call him for now, had he makes an appearance, but you can't see him solid, and he appeared behind the right shoulder of this commander sitting at this desk, and I can see it's him, and somehow innately inside of me from another time and place, I knew that he was going to try to get into his head and convince him of something. So I started praying to myself, please make this work. I kept saying, I'm praying to God on one hand, going, please God, make this work. Please God, make this work. And as he stands over him, behind him, he makes it sound as if it's a premonition that's going to come washing over him later on and probably bite him in the butt. So he better listen, kind of thing. It had that feel to it. And he says, her father's a hardworking naval intelligence officer, and there's this pregnant pause. He's not going to let this die. Pregnant pause. There's going to be questions. So he makes it seem to this commanding officer in his head, and I'm watching him doing it, and while he's transparent, I can see that it's him, but he's kind of transparent. And he's saying this in hopes that it's going to work. Then he disappears, and I'm praying it's going to work. And eventually he makes some signal to the door, which had no window, and I couldn't figure that one out. And the guy comes from inside the hallway, comes into the office and said, "What's it going to be, sir? A blankety blank?" Or looks at me like he's ready to take me out and had no conscience over it. And I knew that's what he was implying, but I can't remember to this day the couple of words that they used. It was something coded. And the commanding officer looked at him and then looked at me in disgust, and he shuts the file and he says, apparently, her father's a hardworking naval intelligence officer. There'd be questions. And then he waves his hand kind of in the air, kind of imperiously when you would like to dismiss somebody. So he just kind of, dismisses the whole situation with his hand. Another guy comes in the office to grab me by the arms and drag me out to the same car that they brought me in. And they took me back to my elementary school. It's now almost dusk. Dump me in a heap and take off. When I did finally, I couldn't move my limbs, and it was one of these things where it was really a terrible and traumatic experience. The point of all of this is that the government's never going to admit to these kind of things, and while they don't, it doesn't really matter. And I myself, and I can't speak for the other contactees that went through similar things, but I do know that the time of impunity is long gone. It's time to release this information and to offer the people the truth. But these kind of some of the practices at some of these bases and dumps is beyond a culture of impunity and some of the, it's just heinous, some very heinous stuff that is not something for medical research. It's not something for these. It has no beneficial. It has no benefit to humanity. But they're trying to do these things continuously and feed money into these programs, whether it's technology or whether it's some other thing going on, because they've just had it going for so long. But it's a culture of impunity in a lot of these bases, and it's just a high time that they be open about it, because I really, they keep saying how over the years how it's going to ruin religion, it's going to ruin the economy. Well, what does that tell us immediately? What does that tell us? If it's going to ruin the economy, then the economy is a false paradigm in the first place and a form of enslavement. Why is it going to ruin religion?
Well,
Couldn't
not only
creator
that, they're going
create?
to have to admit to what had happened, for example, to you too. The same
It
way
was
that once East Germany fell, they had to release all the files on what the Stasi had on all the people that they were basically interrogating and just having a file on.
It's funny you break that up, because my family is German, Russian, and Yugoslavian, and older family members had gone through a lot of stuff,
Well,
over
looks
the
like we
years.
have all three in common.
Yeah, there's a lot in common there, but and I totally agree that they may have to admit to how really harsh they were about it, but at this point, it's not going to change in any of my experience. Um, I can understand their animosity to a point, but I truly, honestly believe that there is no justification regarding anything that they would claim as a national security issue
Mhm.
to violate all human rights treaties and even breach Geneva Convention in trying to get whatever it is that they want, or trying to instill in, or trying to get people silenced, like through intimidation, instilling intimidation.
Right. Bren,
Th-
let me just real quick. I wanted to. Looks like Fabrice also wanted to talk, but after he's done, if we have more time, I'd like to bring you back. But before I switch over to him, I wanted to ask you something about NASA real quick, if that's okay.
Okay.
You were saying something about, you kept mentioning NASA. Are you saying that the actual NASA itself, or a faction of NASA that basically
Well,
was more involved in what you had going on with you?
no, it involved what the incident itself, which was very high profile, involved mission control, NASA administration, um, whoever, whatever part of NASA administration uh, helped the army to help hunt me down and find me and bring me in, pull me out of my school and bring me in for questioning, I believe was a joint thing.
Right.
What level it was of NASA, I have no idea, but it was, I don't know that it would have been a faction. It would have been high up administration that would have been aware of that particular situation.
Hmm.
They just, it just so happened that they took me along for this. It ended up being a huge event, and then NASA had a lot of questions. But NASA was not present during the MILAB, only the Army branch. And then on the second one, it involved bringing in Malevolent ET to pull us out of the house, float us out of the house into a ship, take us back to the same room that they had, conference room that they were questioning me at, just outside of Palmdale in this white two-story windowless building,
Right.
and had my mom there, and then assaulted us and her and just all this stuff. So the second one was ET assisted, but NASA was nowhere, and I really didn't realize. Let's put it this way: my mother passed away in May of last year, and she went to retire, semi-retire out in Florida, but she's right next to Space Coast, And for the better part of 4 years, I couldn't find work out there except as a temp. And then when I was supposed to be hired as a full-time employee and way below my pay scale and my background as a medical biller for years, I found it difficult that I couldn't find work anywhere out there, which was really odd. And then with this position that I was taking, quite a bit of a cut with, but was willing to take at that point, when they found out that I was a contactee, who I was, they turned around and said to me in no uncertain terms, the management of this particular Fiat dealer, we have to cater to the Space Coast community, and this will not do, meaning me being a contactee. And I think it goes deeper than that. And I think that there's this culture of hate with NASA over the difference between their official narrative in certain events and the real story or real narrative.
Right. Well, Bren, thank you very much for sharing your story. And if you, ever put it together in a concisive and orderly way in a book form, I just so happen to know a company that I could recommend you.
Okay, Adnan, if there's a way to maybe to connect with you, we can exchange emails, and I would be very interested in that. And I really thank you for your time.
No, of course, I mean, anytime. If you go on UFOhub, ufohub.net, I have a contact form there, and just simply fill that out. Just write in your name, and I know it's you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Adnan, very
No,
much.
thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks very much for sharing your story. Okay, so let's see if I can finally hear the right pronunciation. Fabrice, you're on. If you can hear me, just unmute yourself, and you're ready. You should be able to talk. Fabrice, are you there? I don't know if you maybe step back, but anyway, I'll leave that open for now. Yeah, it's a very riveting.
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh yes, I hear you now.
Wow, sorry, my microphone is not really working out too good.
Oh, that's all right.
So I
please
hope
tell me your
you
name.
It's Fabrice.
Fabrice.
So, that's right. So you are not very far from it at all.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. I hate to butcher people's names, and I always felt bad. So it's just, let me say it one more time. Fabrice.
Fabrice, yeah, I have heard very much worse than that before. So, so you're doing quite fine.
Right. All right. So what's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to communicate with you. It's more about saying a big thank you about what you are doing. I think it's quite wonderful, to have the opportunity to actually communicate. It looks like you're doing a wonderful work. It must be hard work as well to put all this together. So thumbs up, and this communication really is just about saying thank you. It's really good to hear different stories from other people. The way you mediate among all this, with calm, patience, understanding, and open-mindedness. I mean, it's a breath of fresh air, really.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, it's something I'm passionate about, but yeah, I wish, if this darn thing like family wouldn't get in the way, I'll be doing a lot more stuff with ufohub. I'm just kidding.
I know what you mean. And the good thing as well about your hub, luckily we have technology now, which is really awesome by that. Back in the 80s or 90s, when you had experiences about a bit strange, let's say, and you wanted to communicate, to find out basically what's going on, what's happening. This is quite strange, all this. Well, the only people that you had to talk about this was people around you, your close friend and so forth. And to find someone that had more or less the same experience, your chances here are next to nothing, you see. And with hub like your hub, it's really awesome. You can actually listen a lot and see that actually what's been happening to you for years and years and years. It's just not that you are crazy basically, and there are other people that can relate to that, and you can relate to other stories as well. And
Right, right. But I also like to
it's
think that
yes,
it
awesome.
doesn't have that controlled aspect, because usually media would always want the more sensationalized stories, And I'm so glad that there's this opportunity to just even to tell the most mundane experiences, like that involve something spiritual or UFOs, because TV was always there just to sell the story and get the most views, instead of really kind of getting down to the bottom of it and sharing the everyday man's story.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, we are washed with sensation and all these things. Really, it seems to me that the experience is happening to people that are just plain people, normal people, and there's no need to spin the story into some unreal stuff.
Right, right.
It's crazy enough as it is.
Well, so
I mean,
please tell me, how did you get
yeah.
into this?
Well, really,
Whether it's just UFO related, spirituality related, I mean, whatever it is, there's something that got you going.
Well, it's UFO stuff for sure. It happened to me to start with when I was really young. It's been around for about 50 years on and off. That's it. I'm just a normal guy trying to get on with life. And these things keep on occurring, and that's it. So for about 50 years, I've been looking around and trying to talk to people, not so much, in a half sentence, few times I've been trying to sort of being very open about it. Obviously, you're being looked back as you're crazy, or you're the one that just fell from Mars, or go
Right,
and take
right.
your medicine. And
Well,
it's a bit
right,
of a shame, but I can understand people. We react to that. If I didn't have my experiences, someone would come to me and say, "Well, listen, I've been taking that shapes and this sort of thing," and you'd be going, "Wow, okay, maybe you're not drinking the right stuff."
right. Well,
So
I know from previous chats you mentioned you were in France, so not only are you from there, but
yeah,
it's probably like way early right now, is it?
yeah, it's
Okay.
about 3:30 in the morning.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for still staying up. I mean, do you mind sharing a little bit just from your immediate vicinity, what I guess the French people, how they kind of look at the subject?
Well, I've been spending most of my time overseas, actually. I've been back home about 6 years ago. Well, it seems that the general outlook about France is we are very open about UFOs. There is disclosure and all this sort of thing. But I don't know if they open the file, they forgot to read them properly and tell us about it. Once in a while, we can hear stories, but usually it's taken with ridicule and they're not all that open-minded about it as what we are left to believe, which is a bit of a shame, really. But
Right.
that's the way it goes.
Well, I mean, do you think it's because I think last time I was mentioning something that I would think it's more cultural, because it all depends on where you are and what's more culturally acceptable. That's how you can kind of gauge that barometer, how far you can push it with which subjects.
Yeah, well, back home, we are very open-minded to lots of things, that's for sure. But we don't really believe anything really, which is quite funny. So yeah, they talk about everything really, but to get into it, and as far as the UFO concerned, well, people talk about it, but it's still something, which is science fiction or something. It's not quite right with you.
Right.
I mean, the 2-3 times, I've let's say, try to open a conversation about that, it's always turned out that, oh my God, what have I just done again? I should have kept my mouth shut, man. That's it. It's a bit of a shame,
Right. Well, at the same time, you're not doing yourself a favor if you can't be yourself. I mean, if you're around friends that don't want to hear what you have to say, maybe you just need different friends, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, that's it.
You know.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
The
well,
same with family.
it's right. I mean, speaking of family, it's funny because obviously, my parents, they still very much want to be part of my life and all of that, but they do not want to look into what it is that I do with UFO Hub. And it's okay, but it's funny because occasionally they would want to, just kind of ask just a little bit, but not to do too much. And they always just started out with, well, how's business? I'm thinking, it's not business.
Yeah.
I told you this once before. I started this because of all these experiences, which you chose to just overlook and never ask me about it again. But it's their
Yes.
way of trying to be friendly without really, stepping too far into it. Because I can tell, if they ask me and I go into too much detail, they can kind of like, like, why do we ask him? But it's okay. It just cracks me up. I think it's funny, and then my wife and I would just kind of laugh about it.
Yeah, you need a sense of humor, that's for sure. People are curious, but somewhere along the line, they don't want to get burnt with the whole thing.
Right. So, since you said you were you've been into it, into this for 50 years, are you familiar with what's been happening in France particularly, or are you talking about the UFO field just worldwide?
No, I left home when I was really young. I was 16, and I've been back here about 6 years ago. No, 8 years ago now. So most of my time I spent in England, New Zealand, Australia,
Mhm.
and Switzerland as well. And I have to say that in all those countries, France included, I've always seen something or something has been happening. But orbs are definitely being seen all over the world. It's well, I haven't been all over the world, but everywhere I've been, it's been at least orbs and other things, to be witnessed in the sky, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Right. Well,
I would say
have you
New
had any
Zealand would
experiences
be.
on your own?
Oh yes.
Is there one
Yes.
particular one you could
Otherwise,
share?
I wouldn't be looking into it
Right.
for 50 years. Well, I would say that New Zealand is probably the country, the place, which is a hotspot for UFOs. Right, and actually, when you talk to people down there, it's almost a matter of fact, that there are also there are things flying around. They're quite open about it. They don't really talk about it, but it's not. Oh wow, what do you mean? This and that. It's just like yes, it's kind of fact of life,
Right.
right? Well, my personal experience is started really young. I was about 4 or 5 years old. When basically, I find myself in a up there. Well, it was I would say a room like a glass room, a bubble room, kind of all plexiglass looking, with walls and floors, and everything was round with the same lines, everything. Even the furnitures in themselves, they were part of the whole. It's not like a room where you have, let's say, here's a table or here's a chair or here's something else. The table I was on, basically, just had one foot, coming out of the middle, and the table itself, was part of what I later on found out, the spaceship, spacecraft. And so, but that was a bit unusual to say the least. There was other pieces of furniture, I guess, there too, but I didn't know what they were. It didn't make any sense whatsoever what they were for. The only thing that makes sense to my mind, was there was a table here, and there was this round room, that looked like plastic, I would say, like a smoky white, almost see-through. and there was actually two beings, which I could not really see quite well. They were hooded. They were hooded, they actually wore like a sort of a robe, with a hood on, a short hood on, all the way to the feet. You couldn't see the feet, rather you could see their hands. So, and I remember being next to this being, that actually helped me out from the table. The room in itself, let's call it a room, the room in itself was about, I don't know, about 7 meters wide, it was like oblong shaped, almost like an egg, it was more than round, and about 4 meters to the ceilings. And there was also a second being there that looked quite a bit stronger and bigger. I think there'll be about like 2 meters and a half. And that one could not quite see, it had its back turned away, but I could see that it was sort of doing stuff, with what looked like tubes and objects, with strange shapes, and there seemed to be like a sort of a board, like sort of floating in the air, with little lights, flashing back and forth, etc. And so that was a bit strange, Like, I was young, 4 or 5 years old, but it was, I just said, wow, what am I doing here, And then the first being kind of said, oh, don't worry, don't be scared, and there was no voice, huh? There was no voice. So call it telepathy if you'd like. And and I kind of said, well, I am not scared, I was more bewildered and everything. And I was trying to really look, at her under the hood, to see who I was talking to, And then that's where the other one turned around, and basically said, you are not allowed to look at us. Right, and with a voice, a voice, it's not a voice, but with a very strong feeling of forbidding, of just not allowed, don't do that. Right, so I kind of
you keep breaking up. Can you hear me?
got a little not so, because that thing in my business now. Yes.
Oh, you were.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up on and off occasionally, and I don't know if it's
Oh,
on
that's
your
strange.
end. Okay, I'm sorry. Keep going.
Can you hear me better?
Yeah, I hear you now. So keep going. We'll see what happens.
So which part you didn't get?
No. You said they said you're not allowed to look at us, and then that's the last part I heard.
Yeah, you're not allowed to look at us in the face. Absolutely. The only thing that you could really see was their hands. Right, they look quite humanoid, but with long fingers. I did not count them, it didn't come to my mind, but when I was really trying to look under the hood, because I was quite small, obviously, and they were really tall. It was like, no go, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not allowed to look at us.
But hold on, I'm sorry,
yes.
Maybe I missed it in the beginning. So, but weren't you taken onto the ship? To this place. So, but then, even though you were taken there, they told you, okay, you can't look at us.
You can't look at us. No.
Okay. I guess, did they explain more why they had that?
No, you just don't do that.
Okay.
You just don't do that.
Right.
And so the smaller one was right next to me, but helped me out at the table, and seemed to be somehow empathic. When the other was not. I'm a bit older now, so with retrospect, I would say it was more of a scientific kind of approach, to the whole thing. When the other one was a bit more empathic, was more like, how dare I say, like a bit more of a caretaker.
I see.
she seemed to care about a bit more when I think for the other one it was just more like some sort of experiments to go through, which I could feel did not go quite well actually, and he said, well, it's time to go. So so the other one kind of said, well, and when she talked, I looked again, and I almost saw what it looked like, but it was very fuzzy, and but I would say it's probably humanoid. It's probably humanoid. And then she said, "Come with me." We did a couple of meters, and from the wall, it's like an opening started to, well, obviously open, and then I could like peer out, and then I just realized, oh, I'm in the sky. I'm in the sky, and then she said, well, I don't know what I say she, but perhaps there was more a feminine, empathic feel to this thing, and sorry, it's hard for me to talk. I've never been on a chat line before, and
that's all right. I mean, take your time.
and it's maybe talking to two person about this. So that's what's so great about UFOhub, by the way. You can talk about your stuff, and then at the same time, remain more or less anonymous. It really helps. And yeah, when she said, "Oh well, we're gonna take you back," and then what I saw is all suddenly, like the star starts to sort of spin and move a little bit, almost like we were going down to the right. And as we went down to the right, and then I saw this globe coming faster and faster and faster towards us. And then, hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
And you're still here, yeah? So I'm taking a lot of time here. So I did not expect to sort of talk, I just wanted to say thank you, really. And
that's all right.
And
love to hear your story.
That globe came up, and then obviously I know now that it was planet Earth, but I'm talking here, it's back in 1971, at that time,
yeah.
I didn't have TV, I didn't even have a TV, so we didn't have Google Earth or anything, but it was quite obvious, that this planet came up, and then the little one says, well, that's it, you're going back home. You're going back home, So I felt sort of a drain coming down, etc. And I can't tell you much more how long it took, but more or less the same thing, but the thing that I remember, it was my mom looking at me, and she says, where did you go? And then I told her, I said, well, obviously with kids' point of view. And then when she said, well, she looked a bit worried actually. And with retrospect, she knew what I was talking about. And then she said to me, never forget this, my son, and don't tell to anyone, but do not forget about it. Right? So that was the beginning of things, and then it's been going on and off, not that type, but it's been going on and off for about 50 years.
Well, it's definitely a noteworthy experience. I mean, one, you can't forget it. I can definitely see how that would, keep on driving you throughout your life to just keep on seeking for the answers.
For sure. And I mean, I can remember, I've been going up, about at least what I can remember, 3 times. So, the first time you're too young actually to make any sense out of it. And then after that happened back when I was a little bit older. And then again in my mid-20s, and then again in my 30s, and then that's when you start going, wow, right, something is going on here. And you're starting to look for answers. You're starting to actually see what's going on, from what you're hearing from the TV, the movies, and then after that, internet came up, so I've been researching in that, quite a lot, and didn't find really many answers whatsoever, but at least it was possible to find out that there were other people that seemed to have had this type of experience.
Fabrice, do they have, especially you said you've been back for 6 years, do they have meeting groups? Because I know I often talk about them here in the United States where a bunch of us get together and it can be groups from 50 to 100 and just basically doing this, talking. I mean, do they have meetings like that in France at all?
I've looked around a little bit, and I have not found anything that sort of strikes my fancy at all.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to ask because, it's not every day that, I'm usually always chatting somebody with, they're from the United States or, basically anywhere in the United States, you'll find a group. That's for sure.
I found a group back in New Zealand.
Right.
I was just there, to participate, not really talking, but that was quite interesting. I stayed with them for about 6 months. Interestingly enough, once we had a meeting, and all those people, very nice people, and more like New Age, right into Reiki and healing, on spiritual healing. And that was really, really great. So they were, let's say, like proper people, not smoking, not drinking, and I kind of was hanging for a cigarette, so I just went outside, it was two or three of us, actually having a cigarette there. And then somebody looks up, and then goes, those stars there, they've been there for quite a while, So we look up, and then lo and behold, it's starting to move around, it's about, I say 30 of them. It was like a whole constellation, the whole part of the sky, was sort of spinning around a little bit and going this way, going that way, they sort of move with some sort of uniformity, there was cohesion in the movement and so forth. And then a couple of the people came out as well. And then after about 5 minutes, like the whole of us, it's about 30 people, I would say, just came out, that's at night, it's about 11 o'clock at night, and in winter, so it was really dark, no clouds, etc. And then we looked, and then so we started making comments. Oh, look, this one is doing this, and look, this one is doing that, and so. And what's quite interesting in all this is there must have been, let's say, 20 of us really looking at all this, and beyond a shadow of a doubt, you could not miss it. But funnily enough, there was about 10 others from the group, that were looking in that very same direction and could not see a thing. And actually, a few got upset, because they thought we were actually playing a joke on them. So there you go. It's so some people can see that thing, and is it denial? Is it someone more open to this? Do you actually need to have previous experience when you are younger to sort of being pre-framed, for later on to see a bit more than what other people are saying? I don't know. Right. One thing for sure, there's nothing special about me. I'm just a regular guy.
Oh,
yes.
Well, you're online now speaking about your experience, so I guess you're meant to have it. It's
yes. It's I'm really surprised. You would have told me 2 years ago I'd be doing this. No way.
Right. Well, there's this. I was just gonna say, there's this saying, they say, "See it to believe it," but I think it's actually the other way around. You have to believe in order to see it, because if you're cordoned off from it, when you're blocking it and just simply say you don't believe it, it doesn't set you on that open-mindedness to perceive what is happening. And I know if you're scientifically
Sure.
minded, that's not a good example. That's not a good way about going about to prove something. But it truly is in a way to where you have to be open to it to begin with in order to have this experience, and then more information to come to you if you're seeking it.
Yeah, it seems to be that way, and it reminds me of a time as well. That's in London. London is, as we all know, a big city. It's a big city. It must have been about 8, 9 o'clock at night. I was coming back from work, right? And obviously, I tend to look up in the skies quite a lot, and that's what I would say also to people. If you want to see a spacecraft, if you want to see a UFO or orbs or whatever, you got to look up. It's like going fishing. If you want to catch some fish, you have to throw a line in the water.
Right.
So I kind of, have my nose up most of the time. And here we're looking like I'm about like 5 k's from the city center. And I just look up, and I'm just seeing that big airliner, flying by, I'm thinking, wow, that's unusual, because usually, like with Heathrow and so forth, like big jumbo airplane, they don't go through here, it's not the way, it's not the route. And I'm just going, wow, it must be in trouble. And then there was somebody else I didn't know, right next to me. And then so I just look up and stops, and I was like sort of staring at it for about a good 10 seconds. And then all suddenly I'm just thinking to myself, yeah, jumbo jet. Well, not because it's not making any noise, and it hasn't got any wings. And it was fairly close. It's like an airplane is just about to land in about 2 or 3 minutes. And at that distance, usually you can see the details of the plane. You can see actually, the commercial line. If it's Qantas or US Airline or whatever. And there was absolutely nothing. And there was absolutely nothing. And it kind of looked like, what other people are saying. About it was like a cigar-shaped thing. And we looked at it for a good cigar.
Oh, cigar. Okay.
Yeah, excuse my. When I'm nervous, my English.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to clarify.
And yeah, on the funny thing about that, we are looking here at a huge thing, which is right in the middle of a big city. Right, and sometimes we're thinking, the cigar shape,
and nobody's looking up.
UFOs. That's the one. So it doesn't look like they're really trying so hard to hide.
Right. Well, Fabrice, I hate to cut you off. I was well, no, I mean, thank you very much for calling in, because
get me short of my misery. It's been really hard for me to talk. I'm glad.
No, please do call in. I mean, anytime we have these, love to talk to you. I'm just it's actually now on my end, not so much on your guys' end, that I have to get going. But I do appreciate you calling in and sharing your story. I'm glad you finally connected, because I know it looked like, based on the chat, that you at least tried a couple more other times, to get onto this. I'm glad you finally did.
Yeah, it was to say thank you for your work, and it's really awesome what you're doing. But that's what I reckon. We need a lot more like that.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. It means a lot. I mean, at least I know the effort is not gone unnoticed.
And that's why I put the effort, to sort of participate a little bit in a way to show appreciation.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
No, no problem.
Well,
I can
Fabrice,
go back to bed now.
I was going to say, you better go to bed. It's getting late. All right. Well, hey.
Okay, thanks for your patience.
Yeah, we'll hopefully get in touch again next week.
Due to work for the next 2 weeks, I'm off, except for the weekend. But in about 3 weeks' time, maybe I'll pop in to say hello. If I have not bored you to death just yet, but
no,
I do have quite a few.
Definitely not. Definitely not. I'm glad you did when you had the time. So I do appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Good night.
Okay. All right. Good night. Take care. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for to everyone that had called in today and shared their stories. And as you've seen, the format is just what it is. And I don't, I'd like to give everyone all the chance to talk and tell their stories as much as they can, because I don't want to be like the regular media where it's just small bits, get to the point, and of course, if you want that, you can get that somewhere else. It's sometimes in the long details, whatever is given, that a better point is made, and if you have the patience to listen through it, you learn from a lot that's being told, and it's always been in my experience. It's almost like a song. When you listen to it, you don't want to go, okay, hurry up, get to the end of the song. You enjoy the whole experience of it, whatever tones and whatever it has to tell you. So I kind of look at conversations in a similar way, to where however long it take, however they happen to be, I will get from it what I need to get from it, and of course everyone else listening as well. So please join us next week. We're going to have open lines. Part of the reason why I'm leaving a bit sooner today is actually right after this, I'm going to try to get together with Ray Hernandez to work out our technical difficulties so that I can have him as a guest this Friday at 7 p.m. Central Time. And so he will be talking about his book and the research that they've done with different contactees and abductees. And they did this huge survey that, yielded some really important information from what they found. I think I forgot how long they did this study for, but it's very interesting to talk to them about it. So anyway, we're going to try to figure that out for next week. Please tune in again. Join me on Telegram so you can talk to me, share your story. Simply install the app on your computer or on your telephone, find the UFOhub group, and just join the voice chat when I start it. Usually when it's time for open lines, I open it about half hour earlier, just so that I can test it out on my end before it gets pushed out to a live stream at 7. So like today, I talked to Bradley for a bit, and so that way we can just have a dialogue going. I usually just, whoever happens to be in the room at that time, I just unmute everybody and we just, chat. So that's at least my goal. And so, so please hit the like button, subscribe if you enjoyed this. Hoping that next week we'll get to have more people calling in, maybe calling in for the first time, sharing their experiences, because it can't be easy. Maybe if you don't have a friend around you, I hope you do, but someone that you can't talk to in the same way that you maybe found here, call in, share your story. I know it's a bit more public than that, but I'm certainly here to listen and maybe give a little feedback, and I'm sure everyone else that enjoys these stories would appreciate you sharing them. So this Friday, 7 p.m., I'm hoping to have Ray Hernandez. If that doesn't work out, I'm going to try to get somebody else in. It's very short. Usually it's difficult to find somebody in that short notice, but hopefully we'll work it all out. And so join me next week. Or join me this Friday, and then next week for other open lines. And I hope to see you then. All right. Have a good night.